In part two of The Courage to Have the Conversation, we've now moved away from discussing why difficult conversations matter in leadership and drop in on learning about the steps a leader can take to prepare for a successful conversation. Let me ask you this for anybody listening that maybe says, maybe I'm willing to try, but I'm still terrified. How could they prepare? What steps might you recommend them to practice before entering the real conversation?
3 or 4 things come to mind. One, check your reading comprehension skills. And I really mean this. You need to have an ability to think on your feet in front of people. Otherwise, a stumbling, bumbling leader is not a leader. So you have to be an authority on most of the topics with which you discuss in the veterinary hospital. So you kind of have to know your shit. And you have to know when to say, like I always did, like in medicine, I'm out. Nothing to do with me. I'll set up the meeting for you if you want. And please explain to me how it impacts my life. But I don't have any business at this table. Sure. Because I'm not a veterinarian and I'm not a licensed tech. I'm a therapist who got into veterinary medicine. But when I was talking about medical operations, I knew what I was discussing and I was prepared. Get yourself some public speaking skills, even if it means just recording yourself and watching it, which is uncomfortable as hell. Yeah. I knew I was a good public speaker from the feedback I got, but to this day, folks, and I'm 63, watching myself talk is so comfortable. Listening to myself talk is really uncomfortable because I hear and see something completely different than other people experience. But I got feedback, so that was helpful to me. But being able to command a room, and think of all the leaders in history. Not all of them were bombastic. Not all of them were loud. Not all of them were intellectually curious. I mean, bring you to the table and be confident in that. Even if it's soft-spokenness or, Bridget and I talk like cut a bitch, and we bonded because we have similar kinds of outward-facing personalities. So we have our way and we would both be like, oh, I totally get how you lead because that's how I would lead too. But there's many an effective leader out there that have a completely different way than us. And so respect that. But what they have is at the bottom of all that is they know their stuff and they can hang in a conversation, have gravitas. And, there's 18-year-old Olympians that have gravitas. So it's not an age thing either. And then I would get skilled in interpersonal communication skills, know how to give feedback, know how to coach, know how to have a conflict conversation. And then finally, you don't have to go get a master's degree in emotional intelligence. Just read Travis Bradberry and his wife's book, Emotional Intelligence 2.0. Take the test and just do it. Yeah. And find out where you are. It's kind of self-explanatory. If you're getting, 70s and 60s and 50s, which is basically a C, D, and F in your EQ, you need to work on that. Yeah. It's hard to be an impactful good leader. There are impactful bad leaders, despots, dictators. There's lots of leaders out there that have no emotional intelligence, but their goal isn't build a lovey-dovey veterinary hospital. Right. Their goal is usually rip off the world, steal from here while I'm distracting you here. It's like they have different goals. So you can be a great leader by the very definition of leader, lead people, but the kind of leaders we want, you gotta have emotional intelligence because none of our teammates respond to crack the whip or I'm weak. You got to find the soft spot in between of I'm formidable, I can coach, I know my stuff, I'm unwavering, but I also am kind. And we would call that the ability to be empathetic and to be socially aware because we are social work in veterinary medicine. It is a form of social work by its almost literal calling to be in veterinary medicine because you're providing a service to people, all parts of people, and you're part of the fabric of the community. As go animals, go communities. You can look at how animals are treated and know what kind of a society you're in. Yes. And it's so evolved people treat animals well.
Shawn, the other thing I would personally add to that, it's like lesson learned now, but 20 years ago, if I could have told my younger self this, you don't have to be perfect. And I think for newer, more novice leaders, there's almost this feeling that they have to have all the answers, do everything right, and be perfect. And I would argue, especially when it comes to these difficult conversations. So let's assume they've never had the practice. Let's assume maybe they're hearing this for the first time today with this episode, and they're intrigued to try, but they're scared. And you've shared, okay, well, how to get ready for it. And I would say so much as when you're in it, if you start going left or start stumbling, don't run away. Use that as a chance to be vulnerable and say, I apologize. I'm a little nervous, or I'm not comfortable giving this kind of feedback. So I would ask that maybe if you could give me some grace in how I say this. And I think setting the table, and again, the more you do it, the better you get.
You're talking about the emotional intelligence competency of transparency. And so there's a way to be transparent with people without giving away your power. And that's exactly what you're modeling there. For those of you that are interested, Veterinary Growth Partners, great organization, and they have literally cheat sheets of how to have a difficult conversation. It's really just 5 steps. You state the purpose of your conversation in first person. You describe the behavior that's happening and the impact that that had on you to the person you're having the conversation with. You let them talk a little bit. Then you agree that there's a problem and you troubleshoot how to fix it. You pick a solution, and then you set a resolution and follow-up date, to see if you progressed in this problem. And for many people, writing those 5, 6 steps down is really helpful because you can stick to a script, and then you say that coming into the conversation. I have a script here, not because I don't know what I'm going to say, but because if feelings start to come up or I listen to the wrong things, we can end up being on a tangent. And I'd really like for us to just stick to what we're trying to accomplish today, which is resolve this conflict. So the script is about that. And if you really want to get advanced in hospitals that I used to own and operate, it was just a requirement. This is how we have a difficult conversation. Here's the script. And I'm going to teach you how to do this. We're going to see it every quarter in some sort of role play and testing / awareness / videos, whatever. You're going to be exposed to this knowledge on the regular. We even had it as a screensaver for a while, the steps to a difficult conversation on flashing through, so you can find this anywhere. Well, you mean I just have to follow a script? It won't sound genuine. Right. I said, that's where your feelings come in. Right. All this is a script so that you don't say the wrong things. Yeah. I know you know how to have a conversation about how you feel. And I know you're willing to do this, but you've been willing and you've tried to have these conversations in the past. The number one reason people don't want to have difficult conversations is they've tried in the past and they blew up. They were horrible. It's because they chose the wrong words. They chose the wrong tone. They didn't stop when it got contentious. Our rule with feelings now is whenever feelings start to come up in a difficult conversation, stop the conversation. So somebody starts to get tearful. Somebody starts to get red in the face because they're mad. Somebody starts to interrupt because they can't contain themselves to not talk. Somebody starts to lean forward in their chair. Somebody starts to, check out and look down. We'll say things like, I think now's a good time to stop this conversation because this behavior is not going to help us with the conversation. We're in our feelings, so go do what you need to do to reset. Just like you were teaching my kindergarten son, to reset. Sebastian, this is what you do.
Right.
Teacher made a choice. It was not a Sebastian choice. It was a teacher choice.
Right.
And you didn't like it, and that's okay.
Yeah.
Told me how you feel. Now reset.
Yes.
And he knows what it means. It means walk away and come back with a good attitude.
Yeah. Well, come back when you're not triggered in adult terms.
And we don't, because we didn't have parents that taught us regulation, which is containment, boundary, containment. You could only have a boundary and contain your feelings if you know how to self-regulate. And how we know how to self-regulate in veterinary medicine is smoke a cigarette or take on another emergency that compounds our problems but shoves our feelings to the side. And work our way through it, literally. And then 5 years later, you look 15 years older and you're psychologically destroyed.
And the problem's still there.
The problem is still there times 10. We could talk about this forever.
Shawn, you mentioned this piece that, again, kind of reminded me for maybe a novice listener that this is like a brand new concept. What should a leader do as a form of follow-up after actually having the difficult convo? Because my fear is that some listeners might think, oh my God, I did it, and run away and never look them in the eye again.
Yeah. Well, the last step in a difficult conversation is literally come back in 2 weeks and talk about this again to make sure that it hasn't happened. Because guess what? You're going to have the conversation again. Yeah. And here's why. I think I, again, liken it to home. There's a lot of things I asked my husband to do when we were in conflict. And in the moment, he says, yeah, I'll do that. I'll work on it. I'm sorry I did it. Or I'll say the same thing to him. I wasn't aware. I'm sorry. And then shit, a month later, I'll do it again. And oftentimes it's not even like I'm trying to do this to bother you.
Yeah.
It's I didn't remember again,
Yes.
or I forgot the level of which that is important to you, or the process wasn't clear to me. And the first time I was too embarrassed to admit that to you. So I thought I could just fake my way through it. But clearly now I don't know how to do this. So one conversation does not clear up a conflict. A conflict usually requires multiple discussions about the same process and thing until we finally get there.
Yeah.
How do you know you need to have a conversation about it again? The behavior that you sought to change didn't change. So the process is still broken. We're still not checking people in the right way, or surgery rechecks are taking too long. The process is still broken. Or every time I see you, I still want to cut you. Every time you see me, I feel like you're mad at me. So we haven't fixed the problem process-wise or interpersonally, and the conversation needs to keep happening.
So say from the vantage of a leader, if you did have that successful conversation, and let's say you did see positive change, you should also reinforce change with positive feedback of, a month later, hey, I really appreciate you taking me seriously, and I've noticed a difference. Thank you. Right? Because how often do we hear we don't give enough positive feedback either as leaders?
That's a good point. And I think about my own personal life, and I've done that a lot more in the last few years of my personal life, and it pays great dividends to notice that and to be appreciative of the things your partner does for you. But it goes without saying that we should follow up with appropriate and good feedback. I say it goes without saying because it's ingrained in our heads, but I think I forget that, again, the audience for this is going to be so broad that it could be somebody who has no management experience at all. And so, yes, you have to give positive reinforcement. And beyond that, we talk about coaching conversations and feedback conversations. Well, half of those should be positive conversations. You can give constructive, positive feedback. You can coach somebody to continue to do what they're doing. And hey, this would even improve it more. But I've really noticed that coaching and feedback are not critical processes unless they have to be. And so conflict shouldn't be something that feels bad. It should be about something that isn't working right. And when we get to where it feels bad and then the other person feels bad, then that's about us. That's a you internally problem.
Yeah.
Or it could be you and the values of the person that you're hanging with don't line up. In our political system, if I don't like what's going on in the government, it's not always just a me problem. It is clearly my values don't line up with the people who are in charge, which is why you have political parties and you get to pick.
Sure.
In a leadership role, if the person you are leading has fundamentally different values than you, it will never work. Why would you want to lead them? Because they will undermine you. And why would they want to work for you?
Right.
The great thing about being a leader is you can define the values if you own the business in particular. So it's a whole nother podcast to talk about how you define leadership with managerial tools. How do you use core values, mission, vision, and a plan to define leadership? That's a whole nother conversation. But at the heart of all, in a veterinary hospital, at the heart of all reason to coach, reason to give feedback, reason to confront should be the practice's purpose statement and core values and their mission. Why are you here? How do we treat one another? And what are we trying to accomplish in this next year?
Yeah. Yeah.
And if those three things are kind of aligned, then the other squabbles should be relatively minimal and be about, I took 5 steps to do this and we could do it in 3. We have 2 people doing this when only 1 person needs to do this. Or we charge this for that, but maybe we should charge this.
Right.
We tried cleaning this once a week. That's not enough. We tried cleaning it once a day. That's way too much. How do we make this work? So those are the kinds of conflict we should be in a veterinary hospital. When we cross the line into interpersonal conflict, that is a problem amongst people. So what I say to managers, that is something that you can't really manage because you're not a psychotherapist, but you can manage the boundaries, which is how people behave and what's required. Show up at my meetings to talk about what's happening in my hospital with your brain and your thoughts, not all of your feelings. In fact, I prefer if you keep your raw feelings to yourself. You can tell me how you feel about something, but that's different than displaying and bringing my feelings to the meeting.
Well, and you bring up a good point. I do think we need to focus an episode on just the foundational components of a business, of a hospital, because, for some that may not even understand what you're talking about, for us, it's commonplace of values, mission, vision. At the end of the day, it's the roadmap. It's the North Star of what are you trying to do? What's important to you? And if you don't have that, which as we know, a lot of businesses don't because they weren't taught that they need that, you can't then look at the behavior of the team and wonder why it's a free-for-all. It's a free-for-all because there are no rules.
And you have nothing to compare behavior and process to. Without the foundation of a business plan, you're really just comparing personality traits.
Yes.
And styles of work, which in and of itself would be an offensive process to be subjected to on the regular. It's kind of the whims of the owner and the glasses through which they view life. And that's different for every single person. Yeah. It's funny. I spoke to I'll just say a veterinary specialist, because that's as specific as I'll get, who since residency program have, worked in veterinary hospitals, the lead in some areas of a veterinary hospital, highly producing veterinarian who is skilled and published in many areas for their work. And they called me, and they don't go by they, I'm just trying not to be specific. They called me just last week because they're opening their own practice for the first time.
Okay.
And said, Shawn, what do I do? Like literally, I'm like, you are a board certified.
Right, of course.
And you've been in, in my mind, I said this, but they were literally like, I know probably some business license stuff and but then I get a lease, and then but then what do I do? Like, what are my first steps? Like, how do I really, I could just open the doors and say, people send me your cases, but that doesn't seem like the right thing to do. So, well, that is how it was done in the 50s, 60s, and 70s. Somebody literally just put out a shingle and then went and knocked on, in this case, referring veterinarians' doors, and said, hey, will you send me cases? But I said, yeah, there's a little more you're going to have to do now.
Right.
But this person didn't know.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people that didn't start the business up don't really know what are the fundamentals needed in a business. So yeah, that'd be a great topic.
Yeah. Shawn, given your experience, what advice would you give to a leader that might be listening today?
Educate yourself on the topics that we've been talking about. Stop taking so much spreadsheet CE. Stop taking so much, how to look at a P&L. If you don't know how to do that, you have to know how to do that. But beyond that, avail yourself of the soft skills CE that you can. The other thing I would do is really critical. It was at the time when I was in that space, is network, and professional association development. So join the Veterinary Hospital Managers Association, for lack of, there's all kinds of other things out there, but go to your veterinary surgical college meeting, go to the local VMA, involve yourself in a network of people who are doing what you're doing so that they can pick their brains. Make your practice part of some organization like a VGP, or there's veterinary management groups, or there's, don't just go to the VMX conference once a year. It's a fine conference and it'll give you your CE needs, but there needs to be relationships built with people that are building a business like you are.
Yeah.
Because that's where the fun is. That's where you don't feel like you're out on an island and you get your soul sucked. And that's where you can kind of compare what's normal for you and normal for other people. And you really don't want to do it on your own. It's just, even if you are an introverted person. I'm not talking about be best friends with all these people. I'm just saying network, have at your disposal other people that are walking the path with you, and then maybe even walk the path before you.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's great. Well, Shawn, I could keep you here for hours, but I know I'd have to start paying you, and I can't. No, I can't afford you. But thank you. I appreciate your time today. And I want to just share with you, and I think I've told you this before, but if I haven't, I owe this to you. When I think about my own leadership journey and the people that I've had the privilege of working with, getting to know, naturally, you are one of my favorite human beings. But beyond that, as a leader, you really modeled the type of leadership I had not experienced before and really haven't seen after. And a pivotal moment that changed my life was when you invited me on stage to speak with you at a conference. And it's not lost on me that most leaders, most speakers would never do something like that because people don't often want to share the stage, if you will. And this is in the literal sense. But you are the type of person that if you have an opportunity to elevate others, you will. And honestly, Shawn, that opened the door for public speaking for me. So I thank you not just for your information today for those listening, but I thank you for being the type of leader and person that you are and actually positively impacting my own life.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Thank you. Thank you for telling me that. Yeah, I just kind of believe that comes from a level of confidence too, right? Like I just believe that when I speak, there's nobody who does what I do in the way that I do it. But if there's other people out there that, I mean, you can only listen to Shawn so many times and at so many functions, right? There, I can't be the only speaker out there, right? There's got to be a lot of people doing the dance. So I think and unfortunately, I think the same of the 27,000 animal hospitals out there, I think the same 7,000 hospitals go to CEs all over the United States and the world. And there's another 20,000 that kind of just get it wherever they get it, but CE isn't really their focus. They just want it to maintain. I totally just made up that statistic in my head. It's not based on anything. It is anecdotal thought when I think about all the CE stuff that's available. There's still a lot of people out there that don't necessarily go to what those of us that are invested in this way go to. They just get what they need from their local place. And it's about sustaining, not about expanding.
Sure.
But I don't know the number to be 7,000. I know there's 27,000 plus animal hospitals, but I don't know how many of them are actively engaged in CE. I just made that up. All right.
That's okay.
Well, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. And good luck with the podcast. And I hope that it's a wild success and we reach the ears of thousands and thousands of people.
Well, I hope it helps some. Even if it helps just a couple, we've done a good job.
Thanks, Bridget.